Behind the luxury, flowers, and polished vows was a darker truth: isolation, manipulation, financial control, and a husband preparing to erase his wife from her own future. This gripping story exposes how emotional abuse can wear the face of love, and how a woman pushed to the edge finds the courage to fight back. If you've ever ignored a red flag, this story will stay with you long after it ends.
It was a frigid winter evening at a charity gala in Boston, just 10 weeks before my due date, when my reality fractured. Julian was downstairs, accepting an award for his legal prowess, a titan of corporate law. I was supposed to be on his arm, the radiant, expectant wife, but a wave of nausea had sent me back to our penthouse suite. Rest, my love, he'd murmured, kissing my forehead, his suit smelling of old leather and fine scotch. He'd left his tablet on the nightstand. I picked it up to dim the lights when an email notification lit up the screen. A draft to a woman named Simone. Heard the speech was a triumph. I can't wait for you to come home to me. My breath caught. It had to be a work colleague, a misunderstanding. But a cold certainty washed over me. I was living in a beautiful lie, and the door had just been locked from the outside. I'm so glad you could join me tonight. Before I continue, I'd love to know where you're all watching from. Tell me your city in the comments. It's incredible to watch our little community come together. As a quick note, this story explores some dark psychological territory to uncover some very real truths. The names have been changed, but the lesson about listening to your gut is something we can all learn from. The sweet smell of the salty air from the harbor and the white roses Julian sent me every single week. They sat on the marble vanity, their perfect blooms, a stark contrast to the dread coiling inside me. Our home, suspended over the Boston waterfront, was an architectural marvel of chrome and glass. The Zakim Bridge felt like our private sculpture. We'd been married for 1 year, a whirlwind romance that started when I, Claire Abbott, owner of a respected art gallery, met the city's most formidable lawyer. My husband, Julian Croft, was handsome, brilliant, and a decade my senior. His hand always felt so protective in mine. To our future he'd toast, his blue eyes sparkling. To the Abbott Croft legacy. I'd raise my mineral water to his whiskey, my heart swelling with joy. Everyone said I was the fortunate one. My own staff at the gallery worried I would lose my focus. Then Julian showed up at a gallery opening, discussing pre war art with a passion he usually saved for hostile takeovers, and my independent life became ours. I was 35, he was 45. His family, Boston Brahmins, had been polite but distant, which I assumed was just old money being cautious. When you know, right? That's what I told myself. Tonight the snow fell, blurring the city lights into a hazy dream. Our son was due right after the new year. It was supposed to be a fairy tale. Then the tablet screen illuminated again. It was the same email draft from Simone. Julian's screen showed a preview. I read every single word. Is she upstairs yet? The suspense is killing me. My hand trembled as I unlocked the device. He'd given me the password once to check a flight itinerary. Chelsea 1995, the London neighborhood he used to live in. I saw my own face reflected in the dark glass. A woman about to discover her own execution order. He was a pillar of the community, a loving husband, my everything. I should have stopped. I should have closed the tablet and confronted him. But I had to know. I opened his email drafts. The thread went back for months. Hundreds of messages, pictures, secret rendezvous. My blood ran cold. Simone wasn't just a colleague, she was a junior partner at his firm. They discussed legal strategy, depositions, and the utter naivety of his pregnant wife. My gallery, my family's legacy. He called it my charming little hobby. That's when my heart shattered. I scrolled, my thumb shaking. This was more than infidelity, it was a conspiracy. The asset absorption is nearly done, one of Julian's drafts read. My family's lawyers are incredible. By the time the child is born, everything will be secured in the Croft Trust. I didn't understand. Secured from what? Simone's reply made it chillingly clear. And what about the primary benefactor? The benefactor, me? Pregnancy at her age can have so many unpredictable outcomes, Julian had typed back. Especially for a first time mother. It will be an absolute tragedy. A widower twice over, so unlucky. The air was stolen from my lungs. The room felt like it was tilting. What about his first? Simone had written. Her name was Evelyn. 33. They said she fell down the stairs in their London townhouse. It was ruled an accident. He was smiling in a photo with Simone, the lights of Boston Harbor twinkling behind them. The very same view from my window. This wasn't an affair. It was his business model. My heart hammered against my ribs. This can't be real. You are number two, Simone's message said, sent yesterday. Don't fumble this like he did with the first. I'm not waiting another 10 years to be the next Mrs. Croft. I had merged my life with his, trusting him completely. Tonight, reading their plan, I knew I had to run for my life. I shook my head, backing away from the tablet. This is a nightmare. You are misreading everything. She will be looked after, Julian wrote in his last draft just before the gala. My family is ensuring the gallery's board will align with me. Her art, her inheritance, her baby, it will all be folded into the Croft name. She will be nothing more than a sad story. He was going to make me disappear. I glanced at the door. Julian would be up any second, his face a perfect mask of husbandly concern. My name is Claire Abbott. I ran my family's gallery for 10 years before he charmed his way into my life. I have invested everything into my own name. This baby, it's all that's left of my family. Leave now, now. But where could I go? I thought, my panic rising. The building security, the drivers, our bank accounts. He had access to it all. Go to the studio, a voice in my head screamed. The small workshop downtown. It's the one place that is still truly yours. Go now before he comes back. Don't call a soul, don't alert anyone in his orbit, just vanish. I looked at a photo on the nightstand, Julian and I, his hand resting on my pregnant belly. Why would I believe an email draft? I whispered. His handsome, smiling face in the picture seemed to sneer at me, because his first wife is dead. Before I could let doubt trap me, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Julian. The sound was a fire alarm telling me to run. The award ceremony was over. He was coming. I looked at the tablet, at his smiling face next to Simone's. He was not the man I married. He was a monster wearing my husband's face. And for the first time in my life, I felt a deep animalistic fear. When I looked back at the screen, I saw the cursor blinking in the draft to her. He was typing again. I didn't wait to read it. I didn't hesitate. I just ran. My clutch was on the console table. I seized it, my fingers fumbling with the clasp. The city's most powerful people were in that ballroom, celebrating my husband. I walked, my pace steady, toward the gold-plated elevator to the lobby. The descent felt like an eternity. The concierge gave me a warm smile. Heading out, Mrs. Croft? I pasted on a smile. Just forgot some files at the gallery. He nodded, opening the heavy glass door for me. The damp Boston air was a slap in the face. I walked for blocks, my heels clicking on the brick sidewalk. Hiding in a darkened doorway, I called a car. 3 minutes. I waited, my hand instinctively guarding my belly. The black sedan pulled up. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. Tough night? He asked. You have no idea, I breathed. He pulled onto Atlantic Avenue. I rested my forehead on the cold glass, watching my life become a blur. Historic brownstones, fancy restaurants, the park where he first said he loved me. The city I cherished now felt like a cage. I looked in my purse. A couple $100 in cash. One business card for my gallery. It was all I had. The email was burned into my memory. The lies about his first wife's tragic accident. The way he and Simone plotted their future. The way he would kiss me goodnight and say, "You are my entire universe, Claire." 1 year ago, I didn't know Julian Croft existed. It was at a historical society fundraiser. I was a rising gallery owner looking for wealthy benefactors. He was my knight in shining armor. Now I saw he was just a predator with a taste for new fortunes. Julian stood beside a colonial era portrait and said, "You have the look of someone who knows if this is priceless art or just a brilliant tax dodge? I laughed. He had a way of making you feel like the only person in existence. We spent that first night walking through Beacon Hill, talking about our dreams. He was a top corporate lawyer, a recent transplant from London after what he described as a devastating divorce. He had my phone number before the night was through. By the holidays, we were the city's power couple. In March, during a snowstorm in the public garden, he dropped to one knee. I know this is sudden, he said, but I feel like I have known you my entire life. Build a life with me, Claire. I accepted. I was 35, pregnant, and so tired of being alone. We were married at the city hall the following week. No guests, just us. We took a short trip to the Berkshires. That's when he presented the tablet. We were on the terrace of our suite. Darling, a quick bit of business, Julian said, passing it to me. For the baby's inheritance? I glanced at him over my cup of coffee. What is all this? Just standard estate planning boilerplate, he said with an easy smile. So we can set up the family trust. Sign right here. The air was crisp, and the view of the mountains was breathtaking. I felt so safe, so protected. I traced my signature on the screen. All done, I said. Wonderful, Julian beamed. Now everything is sorted. I went back to my blueprint, savoring the skyline. I didn't give it a second thought. Until tonight in my office, looking at a receipt for a $75,000 design commission and seeing Chloe's name on the invoice. The design firm was one I didn't know. I called my credit card issuer. My car arrived at my architecture studio, a space I'd created from scratch. It was my legacy, the only thing that was mine alone. Inside, the smell of drafting paper and wood calmed me. I opened my firm's banking portal. $200,000, my life's work, my baby's future. I started a transfer to a private account, an account Ethan didn't know about. I clicked confirm. An error flashed on screen. Transfer denied. Administrative hold placed on account. A cold dread crept over me. I tried again, same error, again. My heart sank. I called the bank's wealth management line. An agent answered. I need to understand why my account has been frozen. I heard the tapping of a keyboard. A short pause. Ma'am, a security restriction was placed this afternoon by the party with designated power of attorney. I'm the only designated party, more tapping. Our system shows full power of attorney was assigned on May 5th to Mr. Ethan Blackwood. May 5th. Napa Valley, the restaurant patio, the tablet. I hadn't looked at a single line. No, I whispered, that's impossible. You will need to discuss this with Mr. Blackwood, ma'am, or visit a local branch. The call ended. I sat in the echoing silence of my office, the phone still in my hand. Chloe's name on that design invoice burned in my mind. He's setting up their new home. With her. The studio felt like a cage. A photo of Ethan and me was on my desk. He'd brought it last month, a gesture I'd thought was so loving. Now it looked like an invader's flag planted on my land. I walked to the window, gazing at the city. The lights blurred as the truth crashed over me. I wasn't his wife. I was his latest acquisition, and my company had just been seized. I didn't go home. I stayed in my chair, seeing nothing until sunrise. At 7, I brewed coffee, my hands trembling. The agent's voice echoed. Asterisk power of attorney assigned on May 5th. That night on the patio, the tablet, the family trust papers. I opened my laptop, my fingers feeling numb and clumsy, and searched my inbox. I found it. An email from May 5th. From Blackwood Capital Legal, subject securing our legacy. I opened it, a single line and a PDF file. My dearest Julia, a digital copy for our files. I downloaded the file. My stomach clenched as it loaded. The title read, First National Bank. Absolute power of a attorney and business asset consolidation agreement. It wasn't a family trust, it was a complete capitulation. I scrolled through the 50-page document, my vision swimming. Julia Ann Monroe hereby assigns Ethan Blackwood unconditional and irrevocable power of attorney over account number 7229, including all rights of disbursement, transfer, and closure. Julia Ann Monroe hereby assigns Ethan Blackwood complete control over all business assets of the Monroe Design Group. This mandate is effective immediately and is irreversible without the notarized approval of both parties. My signature was on the final page. I read the fine print twice. The designated party may place an immediate 7-day administrative restriction on all accounts if unauthorized transactions are suspected, without notifying the primary holder. That's what he did. After his assistant forwarded me that invoice by mistake, he knew I'd try to protect my money. He used the signature I gave him while we planned for our baby to lock me out of my own business. By 8:30 in the morning, I was on the line with First National Bank. I had showered in the studio's bathroom and changed into clean clothes. I had a plan: be composed, be direct, get this overturned. The bank manager, a Mr. Harris, listened patiently. I was misled into signing this. My husband said it was for our child's trust fund. This power of attorney is fraudulent and must be cancelled. I see your predicament, Mrs. Blackwood, he replied, but without a notarized waiver from Mr. Blackwood, my authority is limited. He deceived me, I said, my voice shaking. If you believe there was criminal intent, you should contact the authorities. For now, the 7-day hold is compliant. When is it over? It began last night. It lifts on September 28th at 9 a.m., unless Mr. Blackwood chooses to renew it. 7 more days, and he could renew it indefinitely. How do I access my own money? You'll need Mr. Blackwood's permission. I drove to our high rise in Pacific Heights, determined to confront him. My key card didn't work. The concierge intercepted me. I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwood. Your access was suspended on Mr. Blackwood's instruction. An Escalade pulled up. His assistant, Chloe, got out, gave me a triumphant little smile, and walked right into my home. I'm pregnant, I told my brother David, my voice filled with excitement. He smiled, but his gaze was distant. Later that day, our bank called about a $100,000 payment to Vance Design. Ethan said it was for a property investment. I called David, who's a lawyer. That doesn't sound right, Julia. I couldn't find anything about Vance Design, other than it was a new company. David called back. It's a holding company, Julia, registered to a Chloe Vance. My heart stopped as I looked at a picture of her with Ethan at a tech conference. That's his junior analyst, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The purchase agreements seem airtight, David said grimly. The property title was filed on April 10th, the day after we saw our baby on the ultrasound. She is the sole owner. Ethan structured this flawlessly. Right now, that condo legally belongs to her. You'll have to sue. The digital trail was undeniable. Ethan had used an anonymous email, posing as a wealth manager to find Chloe. He gave her a small commission to act as the company's owner. She signed every document, thinking it was a standard investment deal, a pawn in his elaborate con. In the marble lobby, I was stopped by the new head of security, a woman named Maria. She was here yesterday while I was at a building site overseeing a new project. She had given my husband, Ethan, new key cards, reprogrammed the elevator to our penthouse, and erased me from my own life. It was all sanctioned by an order from a major private equity firm, supported by paperwork I had no power to contest. I am so very sorry, Maria said again, her eyes full of genuine regret. I was too shocked to answer. She retreated to her desk. I felt lost in the enormous silent lobby, staring at the elevator that no longer recognized me. I had lost everything. I walked numbly through the revolving doors onto the San Francisco street. The cool bay breeze felt like a slap. Then I saw them. A sleek Rivian and a black Range Rover were waiting. Ethan got out of the Rivian. He didn't look shocked, just annoyed. An older woman emerged from the Range Rover, matching Maria's description. Late 60s, silver hair in a sharp, elegant cut, wearing a Dior suit that cost more than my first car, Isabel Blackwood, Ethan's mother. She examined me like a bad investment. Julia, Ethan said, his voice cold, we should discuss this. But his mother spoke over him, her voice like polished steel. Miss Monroe, she said, it seems there has been a serious miscalculation. Isabel Blackwood, a managing director at Blackwood Capital, held up a tablet. You signed your controlling interest in the firm over to the family fund on May 5th, she said, her voice freezing. It is now exclusively managed by Ethan. On the screen was a document from her company, Asset Reallocation Mandate, San Francisco County. My name was listed as the assigner, Ethan's as the beneficiary. The address was my architecture firm. A clause specified the transfer of assets valued at $15 million. At the bottom was a flawless digital version of my signature, electronically notarized, dated May 5th, 2024. That's not true, I whispered. I would never do that. Isabel magnified the signature. It is fully authenticated, Miss Monroe. The reallocation is finalized and legally sound. My thoughts flashed back to May 5th, a Saturday. We were in Ethan's study. He said he needed my signature on papers for his company's new green energy fund. He had called it cementing our family's future. I was preoccupied, looking at a magazine with nursery layouts, thrilled about our baby. Just sign right here, love, he had said, handing me the tablet. I had signed my name without reading a word. It wasn't for our future. It was for my downfall. It was a hostile takeover of my life, and I had personally approved it. You tricked me, I whispered, looking at Ethan. You executed an agreement, Isabel corrected. Your choice, not to read it, is not our problem. The original is filed. The transfer is legally binding. A couple leaving the building slowed to stare. Isabel raised her voice just enough for them to hear. I realize this is a stressful time, but our firm manages these transitions with absolute professionalism. Your attempt to undo a legal asset reallocation is quite improper. I own that firm, I protested. I built it myself. You did own it, Isabel said coolly, before you signed it into the Blackwood Family Trust on May 5th. More people were watching now. Isabel put on a concerned expression. Miss Monroe is clearly distressed. Pregnancy can be taxing, but this is merely a simple financial reorganization. She made it sound so routine, so orderly, making me look like the unstable one. You're a monster, I whispered, my voice trembling. Both of you are criminals. Catherine Sterling's expression was ice. Our firm's reputation is flawless. Slandering a senior partner carries severe legal penalties. I suggest you think very carefully. The faces in the lobby looked away. Liam, silent until now, stepped forward, his face a perfect mask of concern. Please tell them, I begged him. Tell them it's not true. He shook his head. Clara, you're not yourself. This pregnancy has put you under so much strain. How dare you, I hissed. We just think you need help, he said, glancing at his mother. We're worried about you. Catherine nodded, her sympathy utterly fake. There are some excellent private facilities, Miss Hayes. We can handle the arrangements. The pristine lobby felt like it was shrinking. Every stair was a physical blow. Liam moved to my side. It's over, Clara, he said softly. You have nothing. Let us take care of you. For the baby's sake. A white-hot rage burned through me. I bolted. I ran into the street, the city lights blurring through my tears. Someone called my name, but the sound was distant. I didn't stop running until I reached a bench in the Boston Common, gasping for air. My phone buzzed. Not Liam. It was a text from a block number, 2 sentences. The Hawthorne, 11 p.m. Ask for the booth in the back. Do not contact the Sterlings. It was signed Ben. I checked the time. 9:30. I had 90 minutes and no other place on earth to be. A hostess led me past the polished wood and quiet chatter to a dark corner booth. It was the kind of place made for hushed confessions. I slid into the seat and saw a man was already waiting in the shadows. Ben Carter. He looked far worse than the last time I saw him, 6 months ago, at a tense acquisition meeting. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was a mess, and his face was drawn and pale. His hands shook slightly as he gripped a glass of whiskey. Miss Hayes? He said, his voice low and frayed. He didn't rise. He simply watched me with tired eyes that seemed to already know everything. I sat across from him. You tried to warn me, I said. Why would I listen to you now? Because, he replied, his voice thick with exhaustion and rage, I know what Liam Sterling destroys to get what he wants. He will ruin you the same way he ruined my sister. I can't let him. My hands went to my belly protectively. What did he do? Ben took a long drink of his whiskey. Her name was Sarah Carter, an incredible artist. She wasn't even 30. She and Liam started a design collaborative after grad school. A bitter smile twisted his lips. Liam was the face, the schmoozer. Sarah was the talent, the one with the vision. They were supposed to get married in 2019. By that winter, he'd used legal tricks to seize control of her portfolio. So fast I breathed. That's his method. Ben's grip on the glass tightened. I told her he was a wolf in a cashmere coat. She accused me of being a jealous brother, said she knew what she was doing. He stared into his drink. She thought I was trying to control her. I raised Sarah after our parents died. She was my whole world. 3 months after they were married, Ben's voice went flat. They found her car at the bottom of a ravine of the scenic highway near Gloucester. January 3rd, 2020. Lost control on an icy patch, they said. A terrible accident, but I know it's a lie. His voice became chillingly cold. Sarah hated driving at night, and she had a small bruise on her wrist shaped like fingers. I saw it before they closed the casket. Someone grabbed her. A wave of nausea hit me. I started looking into it, Ben said. My family hired an investigator. We had money then. We looked into Liam's past, his family's finances, all of it. And that's when we found them. Found who? The others. He pushed his phone across the table. The screen showed a list of 7 names. Olivia Reed, Ben said, tapping the top name, married Liam in 2009, died from a sudden cardiac event 4 months later, deemed natural causes. He swiped down. Maria Vargas, 2012, a tragic fall from her Beacon Hill balcony, ruled an accident. Another name, Chloe Kim, 2016, a fire in her South End brownstone, electrical fault. His finger continued its grim journey down the list. Sophia Rossi, Jessica Miller, Ava Chen. Ben finally looked up at me. And then Sarah, 7 women in 12 years, all brilliant, all creative minds with valuable intellectual property, all married to Liam Sterling for less than a year, and every single one of them signed over their assets to his mother's holding company just before they died. Portfolios, patents, the works. I couldn't seem to draw a full breath. You are number 9, Ben added. There was another after Sarah, a woman named Jessica Miller. Died last year, an overdose, like the first woman. The pattern never changes. He marries them, secures their creative assets, and then they die. Why isn't he in prison? I whispered. We tried. Ben's voice was raw with frustration. We took everything we had to the Boston PD in the summer of 2020. The list, the asset transfers, the autopsy photos. They investigated. The Financial Crimes Unit has had Catherine Sterling on their watch list for 2 years. Her role at the firm, the shell corporations, the timing. But they can't connect her to the deaths. Each one is just plausible enough. The paperwork is ironclad. Liam is careful, and his mother is a shark. What did she do? Ben's expression hardened. She destroyed us. November 2020, we were making too much noise. 1 week we were giving tips to the district attorney. The next, our family's business was buried under lawsuits and tax audits. The media portrayed us as greedy, disgruntled relatives. They ruined our reputation. I listened, horrified. A year of legal battles bankrupted my family. We lost everything. A restraining order keeps us 1,000 feet away from Liam and Catherine. We can't talk to the police. We can only watch. His knuckles were white. Then I saw the announcement about your firm's merger. I saw you with him at that awards gala. You were glowing, his arm around you, and I knew. I knew he had found his next acquisition. Why didn't you just warn me? He would have traced it, Ben said, and you wouldn't have believed me. Once you sign those final merger documents, Clara, it's over. And when you're gone, your architectural designs will belong to him, just like all the others. The bar suddenly felt claustrophobic. The low chatter and clinking glasses seemed obscene. What do? I asked, my voice barely audible. Ben leaned in. We need absolute proof. Something they can't bury. Catherine is a meticulous monster, he said. She documents everything. There's a private server in her office at the top of the Hancock Tower. I have a cybersecurity contact who's been monitoring their network for a year. He knows their defenses, but he can't get past the biometric scanner. The restraining order means I'd be arrested the second I stepped into the lobby. He looked at me, his eyes blazing. But you can. I shook my head, my pulse pounding. I can't just walk into a corporate tower and hack a server. You are his wife, Clara, Ben said urgently. If we don't do something, you won't live to see your baby born. And then he will find a 10th woman and an 11th. He will never stop. His words pierced the fog of my shock. What's on that server? I asked. Everything, Ben promised. The unredacted contracts, the real life insurance policies, the digital paper trail that proves what he did to every single one of them. The proof of how Catherine made it all vanish. I closed my eyes, thinking of my firm, the business I had poured my life into. Liam's charming voice echoed in my memory. We're a team, you and I. Ben was right. I could run and wait for him to find his next victim, or I could fight. My eyes opened. Tell me what I need to do. We left the bar and walked out onto a quiet side street. The city's energy felt a million miles away. Ben walked with a nervous intensity, his hands deep in his pockets. I followed a step behind, my mind a chaotic mess of fear and resolve. I had agreed, but I still didn't fully understand to what. There's a place around the corner, Ben said. The Alchemist. It's quiet. We can go over the plan. I nodded, feeling too numb to form words. The bar was a dark, moody spot, hidden between a new condo building and an old bookstore. The room was all dark wood and hushed tones, a classic Boston hideout. A bartender with intricate tattoos gave Ben a slight nod as we walked in. We found a booth in a secluded back corner. Ben ordered 2 whiskeys. I asked for water and watched the ice cubes crack. He put a thin, dark laptop on the table between us. He typed in a password and angled the screen so I could see. You need to hear this, he said. It was an audio file. He pressed play. A woman's voice, clear and full of life, filled the small space around us. It was Sarah. She kept a voice journal, Ben explained quietly. Most of it was wiped, but I recovered a few corrupted files from an old device. I leaned closer, listening. The entry was from a week before she died. She talked about a growing unease with Liam and his mother, a feeling of being cornered. And then a single sentence made my blood run cold. He'll never find the canary file, my one little piece of insurance. What does that mean? I asked. Sarah watched me pace. Serafina was the name for our dream house, the one Liam and I designed together, our future. After he landed the Sterling Tower deal, he turned it into his private side project. I pointed at the tablet. Ava's smile was a dagger. The Serafina file is a hidden cloud drive. It must hold the original plans, our partnership agreements, everything. So where is it? Sarah whispered. His notes had one weird line, I said. The first sketch holds the final truth. Before Liam's firm took off, he kept one portfolio. It was in a flat file cabinet in his old study, filled with our first collaborations. But you think it's more than just old drawings now? My jaw was tight. Liam was meticulous, a planner. Our work taught us to be obsessive about details. He knew how to hide things right under my nose. You think he's pushing you out for her? I think she wants everything that's mine, I said, and he's helping her take it. A deal that would have made our firm the biggest in Chicago. Liam was supposed to announce me as lead partner. Then he was just gone all the time. My throat tightened. Did you ever look in that cabinet? No, my voice was thin. He moved it to his downtown office after the promotion. Said he needed the old files for inspiration. I tried asking about it, but he just said I was being sentimental, that I should focus on the baby. I paused. Then he had me sign papers, creating a new corporate entity. He said it was for tax purposes, to protect our growing assets. He signed them the day after I told him I was pregnant. A cold, heavy dread settled deep in my stomach. He never showed me the final bylaws. He was using the pregnancy to keep me distracted, I said, my voice finally breaking. He claimed the stress was bad for the baby, a way to keep me from the truth about his partner. I pictured Liam, always so calm, working late every night. Our future felt like an old photograph, faded and distant. No siblings to call, just me. He'd put his hand on my stomach. I couldn't fail on the last project, but I will make this one perfect for us. My eyes burned. I pushed the tears back. So, what do we do? My cousin Mark unrolled a security schematic across my kitchen island. The Sterling Tower, overlooking the river, 60 floors. This is his private office. My old firm designed their network security in 2024. I know the system. He circled the executive suite in red. The night guard is an old buddy, Mark said. He patrols the top floors from 1 to 2 a.m. and won't look twice at a familiar face. Ava's office is on the same floor, but the real prize is the server room. The market volatility has made Liam paranoid about leaks. My business manager looks at the statements, but he only checks the bottom line. If we move fast, we have a clear shot. What about the servers? Liam's main server needs a key fob and a biometric thumbprint. I don't have that, but I know someone who does. Who? His former IT guy, a kid named Jin. He works for me now. Ava got him fired last month after he questioned her expense reports. He told me everything. He gave me the admin password for the backup server and the location of Liam's private drives. I stared at him. You've been setting this up. For a while, Mark said, but I needed you to see it for yourself, to have a reason. I needed someone he would never expect to show up on the security feed. Me. I looked at the schematic, at the red circle around my husband's office, and tried to imagine myself sneaking past security in the dead of night. It felt insane, impossible, but the last day had been impossible. What's in the office? I asked. A whole life. Mark said Liam's new partner, Ava, keeps everything notes, contracts, every check she's had him sign. She's greedy but also arrogant. She doesn't trust the cloud. Too easy to hack, too impersonal. It's all on a physical drive, kept in a desk safe, model FS450, with a simple digital lock. Do you have the code? Jean gave me a hint. It's a date. The rest we find when we're there. I closed my eyes. This was happening. When? I asked. Tonight, October 5th, the weekend guard is a guy named Sal. He's lazy, likes his podcasts. We go in at 1:30 after he starts his rounds. We'll have until 3 a.m. I gave him a slow, measured nod. Okay. Mark rolled up the schematic. There's one more thing. I looked at him. Your design studio, Mark said. Chloe Interiors. I've been monitoring their network. Ava doesn't just want your husband, she wants his entire empire, which includes the projects you bring in. Your studio is a part of that. It's worth what? Over $1 million now. Liam is your biggest client. I said, 1.5 million on the Sterling Tower project alone, Mark said. If your professional reputation takes a hit, Liam has a reason to cut ties. If he drops you, the studio folds. Ava could then absorb your contracts into a new division she controls. My stomach twisted into a knot. You think she's coming for me next? I think she already is. Mark said, has she been weird lately? Overly friendly? Asking too many questions about your suppliers? I thought of Ava's call yesterday. Syrupy sweet, but condescending. Liam mentioned your last invoice seemed high. He thinks your suppliers are overcharging, I whispered. Mark's jaw tightened. That's her play. She creates suspicion, whispers lies, isolates you from your own husband. By the time Liam sees what she's doing, you're already out. We have to call him now. Mark said, before she can spin this any further. I stood, my body trembling. Let's go. We got into Mark's car, a gray sedan parked outside my townhouse. The Chicago streets were nearly silent. The city felt cold and vast. I pulled out my phone and found Liam's name. Do it, Mark urged softly, before she owns the narrative. I pressed the call button. 3 rings, then Liam's voice, smooth as bourbon. Chloe, Liam, you need to tell me the truth. I don't think this is the time. I stopped walking on the pavement. Please, just give me a minute. I know what you told Ava. I know you showed her my invoices. Some cooked up proof that I'm mismanaging the budget, but it's a lie, Liam. She fabricated it. Just like she fabricated those expense reports. Just like you've been fabricating this perfect husband act. Chloe, that's enough. His voice was like ice. I can't imagine what's gotten into you, whether it's these pregnancy hormones or if you and Mark are having some kind of problem, you can't drag me into it. This isn't hormones, I yelled, my voice breaking. Ava is draining our business accounts. She's been doing it for months. She got this job for your money, and now she's taking it all. My lawyer flagged a transfer for me an hour ago. Mark interrupted. A wire. $200,000 from your operating account to a shell corporation in Delaware, co signed by you. Your digital signature is on the release. My blood went cold. I never signed that. It's dated October 3rd, 2 days ago. The bank said the money is gone. October 3rd, the day before Ava called me about the invoices. Mark, I didn't sign that. Then how did your name get on the form? I remembered the tablet, the celebratory dinner for the new contract, the stack of documents Liam said were just standard partnership forms. He set me up, I whispered, just like with the condo down payment. He had me sign a supply order on his tablet. I thought it was for the new furniture vendor. Chloe, you need to hear yourself. Mark's voice turned serious, distant. You're accusing your husband of stealing $200,000 from you. Yes. And our shared retirement fund? Yes. And the down payment for our house, too? Yes, I was yelling now. He used a forged power of attorney. He emptied our accounts. He has a fake client on the books. His new partner is a convicted fraudster. Her ex husband is a state prosecutor. He helped her bury the charges. Mark, I know it sounds insane, but it's the truth. I can't be part of this, Mark said. Our company lawyer is calling me back in the morning. If you want to make these accusations, you need to find your own attorney. But until then, you can't contact Liam. I've already messaged him, you're unwell. I'm sorry, Chloe, I am, but the company has to be protected. The line went silent. I stood there on the sidewalk, my phone feeling like a brick of ice. Mark gently took it from my hand. She's already turned him against you. Yes. Ava must have called him right after we did, Mark said. She showed him her version of the financials, told him her lies. By the time you called, Liam was already on her side. It's Ava's method. She isolates her target, gets everyone to her side, and then shatters their credibility. When you finally scream for help, you just sound crazy. She's going to bleed us dry, I whispered, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. Mark nodded. Not if we get to that server first. I tried calling Liam's direct line again. It forwarded straight to his voicemail. I left a frantic message pleading with him to check the server logs, to verify the digital signature, to just talk to me. I knew it was useless. We have to get into that office, I said. Tonight? The original design files are the only proof that the entire Sterling Tower project was mine. Too risky, Mark replied. If Evelyn is monitoring your accounts, and you know she is, she'll expect you to panic. Then what's my move? My voice trembled. I've lost everything. My savings, Julian. My own husband thinks I'm a fraud. You have the facts, Mark said, and tomorrow we'll use them. My phone vibrated, a message from an unfamiliar contact. Chloe, I believe you. Meet me at the gallery at 10 p.m. I found proof. Anna? I just stared at the text. Who's Anna? Mark asked. The junior curator, I replied slowly. She manages acquisitions, handles the interns. She's only been with us for 2 years. Is she trustworthy? I thought about Anna. Eager, meticulous, always sensed when a piece was undervalued. I don't know, but she's the only one left on my side. Mark looked worried. This feels like a trap. Or she genuinely wants to help you, but why would she risk it? Maybe she noticed something in the records or heard Evelyn on a call. Mark remained skeptical. Or Evelyn is using her to get you there. I read the text again. 10 p.m. That was in 15 minutes. I have to go, I insisted, even for a slight chance. Then I'm going with you. I shook my head. No, if it's a setup, one of us needs to be clear of it. You're the only one who knows the entire truth. Mark's expression was grim, but he finally gave a reluctant nod. I'll be parked on the next street over. If you're not back in 20 minutes, I'm calling security. He passed me a small bottle of pepper spray. The ride to the downtown gallery was fraught with a quiet tension. Mark stopped about a block away. I slipped out and walked down the familiar lamp-lit street. The modern glass building was a jewel on the magnificent mile. It was completely dark. I used my old access key for the staff entrance. Evelyn hadn't bothered to revoke that yet. The gallery was silent inside, the only light a soft red glow from the alarm panel in the foyer. Anna, I called out in a whisper. Silence. I moved deeper inside, past the towering sculptures and toward Julian's patron office at the far end of the hall. The door was slightly open, a thin beam of light cutting through the darkness. Anna was at the massive glass desk, a thin file open before her. She was a petite young woman, her dark hair pulled back, her expression clouded with anxiety. Chloe, she breathed, her voice barely audible. Thank heaven you made it. Julian's executive assistant, a woman named Tara, caught me in a coffee shop. I heard him on a call with Evelyn, she said quietly. He talked about an asset in a secure vault. File number 377. Said it was completely off the books. She slid a small slip of paper across the table. That's the bank's address. I thought you should know. People like that don't deserve to get away with it. The login characters felt unfamiliar as I typed. Mark's SUV was parked by the lakefront, the dashboard light glinting off the tablet. I was in. I showed him the display. What did you get? He asked. The screen displayed an unlocked folder. His personal digital vault, the family holdings. The key was his father's birth date, 70348. Mark looked shocked. How on earth did you know that? I overheard Julian on the phone with Evelyn, I explained. He called the deep archives his patriarch files. Evelyn must have seen me access it when she dropped by my office last week. When she came to the gallery, I nodded. She was there just this morning. Mark's hands clenched on the wheel. Why was she there? My own fingers tightened. To finalize my professional execution. That very morning, only 9 hours earlier, I had walked into the Chicago Art Institute before 9 a.m. My keycard still worked. I was still shaken from our argument the night before. The fraudulent complaint filed with the board, Mark's warning, the paltry severance check Julian had tried to give me. I hadn't gotten any sleep. I had stayed in a cheap hotel near O'Hare, staring at a $10,000 check, plotting what to do next. By daylight, I was determined to confront Julian at the gallery and show the board the manipulated acquisition records, the diverted funds, Evelyn's whole scheme. But when the elevator opened onto my floor, I sensed something was terribly wrong. The gallery lights were on full. I could hear voices from the main conference room. Quiet, formal voices, far too many for a Tuesday morning. I walked towards the sound. A half dozen of our curators and trustees were present, even the new intern hired in May. Julian was on the large monitor via a video link, his face set like stone, and standing next to the screen, exuding a chilling confidence in a sharp navy blazer, was Evelyn Vance. She met my eyes as I entered, her expression perfectly blank. Miss Thorne, we were just discussing your department. I stopped in the doorway. What is this meeting? Please take a seat, I think I'll stand. Evelyn's smile was thin as a wire. She opened a sleek black binder. This is an emergency board review. As of 8:30 this morning, the Institute was alerted to serious ethical breaches in your acquisition accounts. A feeling of ice spread through my chest. What are you talking about? She slid the paper across the long table. I wouldn't go near it. One of the junior board members, a young man named Alex, picked it up. His eyes went wide as he read, then he shot me a confused look. That is an authenticated shipping manifest, Evelyn announced. For a $500,000 sculpture, rerouted from our storage facility to a private address in Geneva, Switzerland. Dated October 10th. The order was placed using your secure login and approved through our channels. That's a lie, I said, my voice barely audible. I never authorized that shipment. The logistics firm has confirmed the manifest's authenticity, Evelyn stated, her tone slicing through the quiet room. Mr. Croft contacted me this morning in my role as Chief Operating Officer for his foundation. Given this clear evidence of asset misappropriation, I have been asked to oversee the transition. I looked at the screen, at Julian's face, but he refused to meet my gaze. Julian, I pleaded, you know this is a lie. You know I wouldn't do this. Chloe. His voice was flat, emotionless. I've reviewed the documents. I've talked to our legal team. The piece is gone. She forged my credentials. Effective immediately, Evelyn's voice cut in, sharp and absolute. Chloe Thorne is removed from her position as senior curator for gross misconduct and theft of assets. All network access is revoked. All institutional privileges are suspended. Security will escort you from the building. The room was deathly quiet. I saw the faces of my colleagues. Alex looked down. None of them would look at me, not the curators I'd worked with, not the conservators I had collaborated with for years. They shuffled papers or straightened their ties, their eyes fixed on anything but me. You can't do this, I whispered at the screen. It's what's necessary, Julian said, his voice hollow. A courier I didn't recognize was waiting in the lobby of our Gold Coast apartment, holding a small box. For Evelyn Vance, he said, looking uncertain. Julian finally met my eyes then. His expression was one of cold finality. I'm sorry, Chloe, the family's interests must be secured. The courier shifted his weight. Ma'am, I wanted to scream. I wanted to shatter the Murano glass sculpture in the foyer to make Julian admit what his COO, Evelyn, was doing to me. But the household staff was there, watching. They would all tell the story how Chloe Thorne finally lost control, how she became unstable, how Julian was left with no choice. So I did nothing. The courier set the box on the marble console. I collected my purse, my favorite fountain pen, a small catalogue of modern art. My hands shook so badly I fumbled with the pen. No one said a word. I took the elevator down, the polished doors reflecting the life I was leaving behind. I stepped out into a brisk Chicago afternoon, clutching the fragments of my ruined life. A few pedestrians glanced my way. A woman hailing a cab, a tour group rumbling past, all of them strangers to my sudden collapse. I made it to the corner and had to lean against the cold stone of the building to breathe. Now, sitting in Mark's car 11 hours later, the memory felt like an open wound. He let her cut you out of your own life, Mark said, his voice low. She had to have him do it, I answered. She needs to frame me as unhinged, so when I try to expose her, I just sound like the crazy, bitter wife he had to get rid of. Mark's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. She's trying to erase you, your name, your career, your entire world. And it's succeeding. He pulled the car onto the street. We drove without speaking for several blocks, heading north along the lake. I pressed my forehead to the cool window, watching the city lights smear into long streaks. Then my stomach lurched. It wasn't just nerves or grief, it was a physical revolt. A sudden, violent wave of nausea that made me choke. Pull over, I gasped. Mark veered into a parking lane. I barely got the door open before stumbling to a nearby planter and being sick. Over and over until I was trembling. I braced myself against a brick wall, my breathing shallow, and saw a distorted version of myself in the dark glass of a storefront. Pale, with deep shadows under my eyes, my hair a mess, I looked like a ghost. And then I knew. 4 weeks. I was 4 weeks late. I had been so caught up in the war with Julian and Evelyn, the frozen accounts, the fight for my reputation, that I had completely blocked it out. My hand drifted to my abdomen. Oh God, not this. Not like this. A hand on my shoulder. Elara, Marcus's voice was tense. You alright? I straightened up, zipping my coat against the Seattle mist. Yeah, fine. Overwhelmed. I exhaled and slid back into his car. Marcus watched me, his brow furrowed in disbelief. You don't look fine. I will be, I vowed, mostly to myself. We pulled back into traffic. I sat rigid, a hand hovering over my abdomen, as a terrible certainty coiled in my gut. Tomorrow I'd hire counsel. Tomorrow the war would start. But for now I could only fixate on the fact that I might be carrying the child of a man, letting his COO destroy my life. We drove. Marcus kept shooting me worried looks. I stared at the dark waters of the Puget Sound. After another block I spoke. Can we find a drugstore? Marcus's head turned sharply. Now, please. He said nothing, just veered onto First Avenue and stopped at a 24-hour drugstore. The fluorescent glare inside was harsh, washing out all the color from the aisles. I'll be right here, Marcus promised. I gave a slight nod before I went inside. The glass doors slid open with a whisper. The store was deserted except for a cashier absorbed in his phone and a man buying antacids. I walked past the tourist trinkets and travel supplies, aiming for the health section. The home pregnancy kits were near the vitamins. I took two different kinds, needing absolute proof, and approached the counter. The cashier scanned them without a glance. 41.20, he said flatly. I paid with a card from my own account. The restroom was down a narrow, poorly lit corridor. Inside, the light hummed loudly over the lone stall. The lock on the door was broken. My hands trembled opening the first box. The directions were horrifyingly simple. Hold for 5 seconds, wait 3 minutes. One line was negative. Two lines was positive. I did what it said. I placed the plastic stick on the sink and set a timer on my phone. 180 seconds. As it ticked down, I saw my reflection. I was a wreck. My hair was tangled, my eyes were swollen, and my skin was ghostly pale. I looked like a woman whose world had just imploded, because it had. But if two lines appeared, my world wasn't just broken. It was now permanently tethered to Julian and his corrupt technology empire. I tried to place my last cycle. Late April, perhaps, between planning the gallery gala and soothing nervous patrons, wrapped in the fantasy of a perfect marriage, I hadn't noticed. Then everything shattered. The vicious arguments, Serena's deception, and I just tried to survive. I was over 2 weeks late, maybe longer. My phone buzzed. I looked at the test, two stark blue lines. I stared at them, hoping they were a manufacturing error, but they were bold and clear. They weren't going away. They were a crushing, definitive truth. Pregnant, maybe 6 weeks. That would have been our anniversary trip to the San Juans. The same trip Julian swore my museum endowment was secured, the same trip his COO Serena called him hourly. I had been carrying his child for more than a month, oblivious. My knees buckled. I sank to the linoleum floor, clutching the test, and broke down completely. Not quite weeping, but ragged, choking sobs that bounced off the tiled walls. This was Julian's child, the baby of a man who was letting his corporate partner dismantle my reputation. A woman who wanted everything I had. And now this. If they found out, it would become leverage. They would sue for custody, brand me an unfit mother, and trap me for the next 18 years. Worse, Serena would see this baby as just another corporate asset, a future heir to the Thorn fortune she would need to manage or erase. I thought about choices I never imagined I'd have to make, ending it, giving it up, vanishing and starting over. But my mind recoiled. This child, this tiny spark of a life, didn't ask for Julian as a father. It didn't ask for this mess. Neither did I. I placed a hand on my still flat stomach. I'm sorry, I whispered to it. I am so unbelievably sorry you're part of this. But I would not let Serena ruin us. Not anymore. If I was having a baby in this chaos, I would fight for a future free from its father's toxic legacy. I stood, wiped my eyes, and faced the mirror. I no longer saw a victim. I saw a mother. I tucked the test into my purse and left the drugstore. Marcus was leaning on his car across the street. He saw me and his expression tightened. I walked toward him, my voice strained. He just waited. Marcus, I said, I'm pregnant. A thick silence hung between us on the empty street. I watched his face shift from shock to a cold, pragmatic dread. Does Julian know? He asked, his voice low. No, and he can't, I answered. Marcus's tone grew sharp. If he finds out, he'll weaponize it. He'll use his tech to fabricate a history, making you look unstable. Then he'll take the child. Or worse, he'll see the baby as a liability and accelerate his endgame. You think he'd harm me? He's destroyed careers for far less, Marcus said. And if something happens to you, he's a grieving husband who inherits everything. The baby is just a sad story. A chill seeped into my bones. Then he is not finding out, I said. Not until he's behind bars. Marcus met my gaze. So what's the play? I'm having this baby, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. This child will know its father was a monster, but that they were wanted, loved, and will never have to live in his world. A flicker of respect showed in Marcus's eyes. Your dad would be proud. My throat closed up. I hope so. Marcus straightened up. We can't wait. To keep you both safe, we need concrete proof. We have to get it tonight. Tonight, I repeated. I thought his network was a fortress. It was, Marcus said, before he threw you out. before Serena started her smear campaign, and before this, he nodded toward my stomach. The longer we wait, the higher the risk Julian finds out you're still in Seattle, tracks you down, and silences you. We move now. I held his gaze. Can we do this? No, Marcus answered flatly, but we don't have another option. I pulled the spare keycard from my purse. Penthouse access, the study server, passcode 826. Okay, I breathed. Let's go. We got into his car. Marcus started it up and pulled away, heading north toward downtown. The Seattle skyline loomed ahead, a kingdom of glass and light. Inside one of those towers, on a custom built server in my former home, was the evidence I needed: the logs of corporate espionage, the manipulated stock algorithms, the files on two programmers who vanished. I laid a hand on my belly. We're going to finish this, I whispered. I promise. Marcus didn't reply, just accelerated. By midnight, we were in his cluttered workshop. A single monitor lit the cramped space. His shop overlooked the industrial district, a world away from Julian's sleek high rise. Tonight, it was our command center. Marcus pulled a small bag of digital tools from a drawer, the devices inside showing years of use. I built the security for Julian's network 5 years ago, he said softly. He was the best cybersecurity analyst in the city. They never figured I'd remember the back doors. He pulled up a network schematic. A small icon pulsed on the layout. He focused on the study. Encrypted firewalls, biometric scanners, the faint trace of a cooling system. Marcus studied the diagram, his face grim as he located a flaw. He found a loophole. A brute force attack would set off every alarm. We had to piggyback on an unsecured climate control sensor. One node, then another. The access points were outdated. The code was a version I recalled him complaining about. He mapped the digital path with a focus that was both brilliant and frightening. 4, 5. Marcus paused at the final firewall diagram, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Nothing. He highlighted the connection. The digital space beyond was empty except for a single data vault. Monitors behind him showed raw network data, their green text reflecting on his glasses. Firewalls here, encryption there. The entire architecture of my husband's tech empire. Marcus pointed to the screen showing the server's file system. A single file glowed red. He's got a honeypot, he whispered. Completely undocumented. I had to dig through the original system logs to find it. We navigated the virtual directory, the clicks of his mouse, loud in the silent workshop. My heart hammered against my ribs. Each command was a risk. A data vault labeled Project Chimera was the final barrier. A lock icon pulsed next to it. Marcus flexed his fingers over the keyboard and began typing commands. A second later, a password field appeared. Inside that vault was a record of Julian's first illegal deal. A mahogany-paneled study, the window framing a view of Central Park. Marcus navigated through folders on his encrypted laptop. Open the safe, she urged. He examined it. Julian at charity galas. Julian breaking ground on a new tower. But one detail caught his eye. A small silver box on the mantelpiece, a gift from their father, a music box playing Claire de Lune. Eleanor watched as Marcus inspected it. Behind the winding key, a tiny inscription was almost invisible against the metal, a sequence of numbers, a backup code. Marcus entered it, and the safe's digital keypad lit up. It displayed 8 empty spaces. What is it? I whispered. The hint says our beginning, Marcus said, but our anniversary code isn't working. He keyed in their wedding date. The keypad flashed red, invalid. The day he proposed, Marcus tried. He made such a show of it. He entered the new date. Red again. Invalid. The day he met Dad, I suggested. That's what started all this. Or, Marcus said, pulling up a digital copy of the Foundation's charter, we could use the date he really cares about. He looked at me. I understood. I reached over and keyed in 1968. The safe clicked open with a soft thud. A quiet hum filled the room. The contents were sparse but damning. Marcus pulled out a leather ledger and a slim burner phone. The ledger was filled with coded entries. Project Nightingale, Hudson Acquisition, BCP. Beside them, a single note with a simple tag, Isabel 2023. At the back, a sealed envelope marked Family Trust. Marcus's fingers moved quickly. He used a portable scanner to digitize the ledger pages and connected the burner phone to his laptop. The subledgers came next, then the transaction records. What is all this? I whispered. No idea, Marcus muttered. But Julian wouldn't use this kind of offline ledger for his declared assets. He started the data clone and glanced at his watch. 2:16 a.m. His flight was rescheduled. He lands in an hour, Marcus said. We have 30 minutes before he walks in that door. Just then, the phone, now connected, buzzed silently on the desk. A rideshare notification. Julian's car had just left the airport. He's on his way. What do we do? We hurry. Marcus initiated a fast copy sequence, hiding the process behind a system diagnostic. Don't panic, he whispered. We watched the blue progress bar crawl across the screen. Julian was now minutes away. He was close enough to see the lights of the townhouse. We were ready to shut everything down. My heart pounded against my ribs. My stomach was a knot of ice. My hand moved to my belly, a protective instinct for the child I had to shield from this man. Julian's car was turning onto our street. The data transfer finished. Marcus ejected the drive. We were clear. He wiped the phone's recent activity log and shut the safe door, the lock clicking into place just as we heard a key in the front door. We slipped out of the study. He was home. A terrifying silence filled the hall. We faded back into the guest wing. Marcus let out a slow, quiet breath. Let's see the truth. He plugged the clone drive into his laptop, then disconnected the machine from the house Wi-Fi, creating a secure bubble. The glow of the screen was the only light in the pitch-black room. I sank into a velvet chair, my body trembling. We have it all, I breathed. Marcus was quiet, his focus locked on the screen. He opened the first scanned image. A perfectly kept ledger appeared, its neat columns casting a stark light on his face. And there in the first entry was a name that made the air leave my lungs. Esther Properties, 2018, zoning sabotage, forced sale, $22 million. He killed the laptop's lights. The city's glow was a distant memory, leaving only the screen's harsh glare. 12:50 a.m. He let the decryption key run on the phone's data. The ledger images were first, dense with ruin, the story of a financial predator. Marcus set the main page as the background. I leaned in as he zoomed on the first name. The writing was precise, emotionless. At the top, a single name, Astor Properties. Below it, the cold mechanics. Year 2018. Method zoning complaints. Permit blockade. Assets acquired for $22 million. Case closed April 17th, 2018. Marcus's hand was tight as he scrolled. Chen Textiles, year 2019. Method supply line disruption, debt acquisition. Assets seized for $38 million. Bankruptcy filed July 8th, 2019. Another, Belmont Holdings, year 2020. Insider information, forced buyout, $31 million. The investigation was quietly closed. November 6th, 2020. Marcus kept reading. His voice was a low growl as he listed the shell companies Julian used. Apex Real Estate, 2019. A partnership trap worth $52 million. Nova Designs, 2020. A copyright suit that bankrupted them for $61 million. Ridgeback Ventures, 2021. A hostile proxy battle that cost them $55 million. A wave of dizziness washed over me. Each name was a family I knew, a business built over generations. Someone who saw a partner in Julian, just as I had. Someone who signed contracts they didn't understand, who trusted his vision, who lost everything thinking it was their own fault. Marcus scrolled. Sterling Annex. My blood went cold. Year 2022. Method spousal clause. Leveraged debt. $95 million stolen. From my family's foundation. Investigation stalled. June 10th, 2022. Marcus looked at our family's name on the screen. His jaw was granite. His finger hovered over the trackpad. Eleanor, I am so sorry, he said, his voice raw. He didn't wait for me to speak, just moved to the next entry. Vanguard Hospitality, year 2023. Method corporate espionage, character assassination, assets liquidated for $88 million. Dollars. The deal was finalized November 9th, 2023. The case was dismissed November 21st, 2023. 7 families, 5 years, nearly $500 million. Dollars. Marcus clicked on a different file from the phone. It held a single document, drafted in that same chillingly neat script. EST, the Eleanor Sterling Trust, activated upon birth of first child, $610 million. Sterling Foundation Board Control, $110 million. Total value, $720 million. Transfer scheduled for October 3rd, 2024. I stared at the screen. My due date. October 3rd was my due date. My hand flew to my stomach. A child. If I had a child, Julian would seize control of everything through our marriage, and as the father, the trust, the foundation, my entire family's work would belong to him, and my family would be ruined. You were the final takeover, Marcus said, his voice barely audible. The crown jewel. I couldn't speak. Marcus closed the file and opened the folder of text messages. He brought up a thread between Julian and Isabel. 12 months of correspondence, each message a piece of the conspiracy. He showed me the first. I didn't want to read it, but I couldn't look away. It was a message from Julian coaching my family's own lawyer on how to draft a postnup to his advantage. The message timestamp showed it was sent from inside our home. It was so methodical, so cruel. He wasn't just planning a scheme, he was turning our own advisors against us. Sterling Annex, Marcus said, his voice filled with contempt. He clicked to another message, a picture. The CEO of Vanguard Hospitality, a man our family had known for decades, looking broken as Julian signed the papers to acquire his company. Vanguard, Marcus said. He showed me message after message. Each text was a new betrayal. Each one showed a proud person being systematically dismantled. When he got to the last exchange, he paused. It was from 2 weeks ago. It was from Isabel. Julian must not get nervous. This is my insurance. It was her own leverage. If he tried to remove her from the deal, she would expose everything. I stared at her words. She was blackmailing him. Blackmail, Marcus confirmed, against Julian. If he ever betrayed her, ever tried to pin it all on her, she had an arsenal to prove he was the mastermind. She's been his partner for years. This is evil. This is Isabel. Marcus's face was ashen. She was never just his mistress. She controls him. He copied the text logs to the secure drive, his fingers trembling. He then pulled up files on Julian's hidden accounts and offshore holdings. He laid them all out on the screen. This is everything, he said. The wire transfers, the messages, the internal legal advice he buried. It's more than enough to put them both away for life. Then why do you look so horrified? Marcus navigated to one last file from the phone's cloud backup I hadn't seen. It was labeled with that same cold, precise lettering. ES Contingency Plan. He opened it. A single image loaded. A confirmed booking for a private medical flight scheduled for tonight, October 10th, 2024, in my name. The folder was named the Solana Project. I leaned closer. Julian angled the laptop screen away from me. Item 1, Charity Gala, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Fairmont, reinforce the power couple narrative. Key venture capitalists will be present. Item 2, disorientation, 8:30 p.m. Clonazepam, 1 milligram provided by G. The head waiter will serve the bespoke cocktail. Item 3, conveyance, 10:15 p.m. subject impaired. Drive to the family estate at Big Sur, Ocean Bluff Trail. Item 4, conclusion, 11:45 p.m. Escort subject to the overlook, a 200-foot drop. A sudden stumble, no evidence of foul play. Item 5, notification, morning, October 12th. J reports subject missing. Search initiated, body found by midday. Deemed a terrible accident due to pregnancy-related vertigo. I couldn't get any air. They're planning to kill me tonight, I whispered. Marcus's expression was stone. We've got less than 10 hours. So what's our move? Marcus tapped the initial on the file. G, he said, Julian's sister. Genevieve, she's the chief counsel for the entire Vance family trust. She's his architect in all this. I recalled the strange server outage at the gallery. The confusion, Marcus passing me a secure drive, while Julian was staring into the IT staff. That's why you warned me about the shared cloud, I said. You knew. Marcus gave a slight nod. I've been tracking Julian's private comms for weeks. I intercepted the encryption keys. I saw the framework. But I got out of there. You did, Marcus agreed. Which means they're shifting to their contingency. What's the contingency? Marcus pulled up the next file. The same sterile text filled the screen. Protocol 2. If subject is not neutralized, activate phase 2. Initiate character demolition, plant fabricated emails of affairs, use family court contacts to issue a temporary restraining order, compel a psychiatric evaluation, the Redwood Grove Wellness Center, subvert during transit or at the facility, frame as a prepartum psychological collapse. My blood ran cold. They're going to have me declared mentally unfit, I murmured. Or have you institutionalized? Marcus said, the exact playbook they used on his last serious girlfriend. I stared at the offshore account ledgers, the edited audio files, the entire murderous agenda. What are we supposed to do? I asked. Marcus shut the laptop. We leak every last word, he said, before they can erase us. Wait, let me show you the project file. Yes, they created a whole timeline to get rid of me. Comment exposed to see the details. A warning, this contains a fictional scenario for awareness. If this is too much, feel free to keep scrolling. But if you stay, you'll see how predators operate. Marcus didn't close the file, he just sat there, staring at the plan, his face pale. Show me again, I said. I need to see every single detail. He reopened the window and tilted the screen. The Solana project timeline. Date October 11th, 2024. Phase 1, Gala 7 to 9 p.m., the Fairmont Hotel. Solidify alibi. Subject must be observed engaging with Jay in a public setting. A minimum of 7 credible witnesses. Phase 2, impairment 8:30 p.m. Agent G, Genevieve Vance, ESQ, will task the sommelier with delivering a non-alcoholic cocktail, clonazepam, 1 milligram, mixed into the drink. Subject will exhibit effects within 15 minutes. Dizziness, impaired judgment, memory lapses. Jay will escort subject to the car, explaining to onlookers she's feeling faint from the pregnancy. Phase 3, relocation 10 to 10:30 p.m. Drive to the Vance estate in Big Sur. Coastal Bluff access point. GPS coordinates 36.2725 degrees north, 121.808, 1 degrees west. No estate staff, zero traffic after sunset. Phase 4, positioning 10:30 to 11:15 p.m. Guide, subject a quarter mile along the trail to the primary overlook. Elevation gain 200 feet. Subject will be disoriented but compliant. Place subject near the unstable cliff edge. Phase 5, resolution 11:45 p.m. Induce a fall from the cliff. A 200-foot drop onto the rocks. Ensure the site appears undisturbed. No defensive marks, no signs of a struggle. Clonazepam becomes much harder to detect in toxicology reports after 24 hours. A coroner screen will likely be inconclusive. Phase 6, recovery, morning, October 12th. Jay will report the subject missing at 9 a.m. A private search will be launched by 11 a.m. The body will be discovered by 3 p.m. A medical examiner, a family associate of G's, will rule the death an accident caused by vertigo. The case will be closed by the end of the week. I was frozen. They choreographed every last moment, Marcus said, his voice low. Genevieve was going to have you drugged. Julian would have walked you to that ledge while you were completely out of it, and then he would have pushed you and called it a tragedy. But I left, I said. I had a dizzy spell around 8:45. I insisted we go home. Marcus nodded. That dizzy spell saved you. By the time Julian realized you were gone, phase 2 was impossible. He couldn't drug you. He couldn't get you to the estate. Was that you? I asked. Did you do something? Marcus just met my gaze. It doesn't matter now, he said. What matters is that Protocol 1 failed. So they activated Protocol 2. He displayed the next file. Protocol 2 Contingency. Initiated October 11th, 2024, 9:15 p.m. Subject has evaded Phase 1. Alternative resolution strategy engaged. Step 1, discredit and isolate. Step 1, social isolation. Use my sister, Genevieve Vance, to plant doubts about Clara's mental state among our social circle. Step 2, asset control. Propose a prenatal trust, supposedly to protect the child's inheritance, containing a clause that gives me full managerial power. Obtain her signature. Step 3, fabricate instability. Record all emotional conversations, edit them to create a narrative of a breakdown. Bribe gallery staff to provide statements about her erratic behavior for a family court judge. Step 4, act. File for separation, claiming extreme emotional distress. Petition for an emergency psychiatric hold, using our contact at the county court to guarantee approval. The goal? Brand her as an unfit mother to secure sole custody. Step 5, acquisition. With Clara institutionalized, all marital assets and the trust revert to my control. Estimated window 90 days. Projected value $12.2 million. I couldn't catch my breath. He's going to frame me as unhinged, I said, my voice trembling. He'll take our child. Marcus pointed at the screen. This is a hostile takeover of your life, Clara. Genevieve's fingerprints are on every document. She's a viper, I whispered, the text swimming before my eyes. This is how she's systematically ruining me. She engineered a similar outcome for Julian's former fiancé, Marcus said grimly. You will not let this happen. I saw the ruthless strategic plan, a business proposal for my own destruction. There's more, Marcus said softly, opening a new folder. A series of encrypted chats between Genevieve and a background investigator. The next directory was labeled The Wren Initiative Phase 2. He opened it. A profile appeared. Anya Sharma, age 32. Profession, award-winning architect. Net worth, $3.4 million. Primary assets, a portfolio of architectural patents, a penthouse in Pacific Heights, and substantial tech investments. Status, single, mourning the recent death of her mentor. Vulnerability, emotionally unguarded, looking for a benefactor for her new foundation. Timeline, first contact scheduled for November 15th, 2024, exactly 3 weeks after C's planned commitment. Underneath the profile was a draft text message. Anya, this is Julian Vance. I was so deeply impressed by your speech tonight. As someone who has also experienced great loss, your vision truly moved me. I would be honored to be the founding donor for your foundation. Perhaps we could get a coffee. No agenda, just one creative mind supporting another. Julian. Sickness churned in my stomach. He's already lined up my replacement, I managed to say. 3 weeks, Marcus said, his voice flat. 3 weeks after they have you committed, he sends that text. Anya will believe she's met a philanthropist. In a year, she'll be just another asset to be liquidated. I stared at her confident photo, a building model in her hands, completely unaware. We have to warn her, I said. We will, Marcus answered. But we need a bigger firestorm. If Julian silences you, Genevieve will scrub all of this. He'll vanish, and Anya will be next. What do we do? Marcus began packing his gear. We give it all to the press tonight before they know we have it. How? There's a reporter at the Chronicle, Marcus said, a specialist in Silicon Valley corruption. A total pit bull. She archives everything offline. It all goes public. If you show her these documents, the offshore accounts, the entire plan for Anya, if you expose Julian and Genevieve to a real journalist, they can't bury this story. The entire world will see it. Julian will have his security on me the second I step outside. Not if the journalist comes to us, Marcus said. I have a contact, Maria Flores. She's been trying to crack Julian's investment shell companies for a year. If I tell her we can prove his other conspiracies, the profiles, the accounts, everything, she'll meet us. She can arrange a safe house. A flicker of hope ignited in me. You think she'll believe us? She will when she sees this drive. A sharp chime from Marcus's phone made us both jump. A silent alarm from his building's perimeter cameras. Marcus's face drained of color as he looked at the feed. We both looked towards the window. A man was standing across the street. Expensive suit, an earpiece, his eyes locked on our apartment. Julian's head of security. He's watching the building, Marcus mouthed. Don't move. The man lifted his wrist to his mouth. A man on the street corner. My pulse quickened. He raised the phone toward our window. I flinched away. Mark cursed under his breath. We go, now. He grabbed the fire escape keys. We took the service stairs to the alley. We drove 3 blocks without lights before getting on Storrow Drive. The Globe, I said. We go this afternoon and show them everything. Mark agreed. 4 p.m. His product launch starts then. Be ready. I clutched the hard drive. I had to see this through. Ready, I said. He merged into traffic. A block, two. I was finally breathing. Then 2 sets of brights flared in the mirror. Mark, they found us? 2 black SUVs? And they were gaining. The lead car swerved next to us. In the glow of the dash, I saw the driver's face. It was Richard's head of security. The second SUV cut us off, blocking the road. Mark wrenched the wheel, but we were trapped. Our car skidded to a halt. Step out of the car, a voice commanded, sharp and amplified. Mark reached for his phone. Stay here. My door was torn open. Strong hands grabbed me. I fought, but an arm was wrenched behind me, pain shooting through my shoulder. That's enough, a woman's voice cut in. Not mine? Isabel. I was pulled out and shoved against the car's hood, the cold metal biting my cheek. My head spun. 2 security guys pulled Mark from the car. He didn't struggle as they cuffed his hands. Then Isabel stepped out of the lead SUV. She stared right at me, her expression a blank slate. Isabel, don't, I pleaded. I called him, she said, her voice like ice. You've been sending harassing messages, Eliza. I had no choice. Isabel held up a phone. I have your texts, the private investigator's report, all of it. Richard appeared, immaculate in a bespoke suit. He gave me a cold, dismissive smile. Show her, he told Isabel. She swiped the screen and turned it toward me. It was a restraining order. Subject, Eliza Vance. Harassment. Then I saw the messages. My name, my number, sending threats to Isabel. A wire transfer of $100,000 from our joint account to a PY firm. The authorization was a perfect copy of my digital signature. That's a fake, I said. Isabel, you know that's not real. The metadata was verified by our forensics team, Isabel stated. Because Richard pays their salary, I cried, my voice cracking. He forged that just like he forged the patents for my father's designs. Isabel swiped again. A loan application against our portfolio for $500,000 paid to one of her shell companies. Submitted October 10th, 2024 at 1:13 a.m. That requires my biometric approval, Mark. I never did that, I whispered. Your fingerprint was used on your phone for the final step, Eliza, Richard said softly. The server logs it. 1:13 this morning. That's when I was asleep. He must have used my thumb while I was sleeping next to him. It's a lie, I said, desperate. Mark, he's emptying the family trust. Look at the trades. Enough. Richard's voice was sharp. He stepped forward, holding the hard drive. Our hard drive. You should have been focused on the baby. He plugged it into a tablet and navigated to the hidden partition. He showed the screen to Mark. It's proof, Mark. Just look, I shouted. The payoffs to Isabel, the embezzlement. Richard opened the first folder. Daniel Chen, 2019, severance package, $300,000. Mark's brow furrowed in confusion. Then Richard dragged the folder to the trash and permanently deleted it. No, I lunged, but a guard caught my arm, yanking me back. Richard opened another file. Jessica Riley. Deleted. That was my father's assistant, I choked out. She died in 2019. He pushed her out, Mark. He paid her family to call it a suicide. Richard deleted the file. The icon vanished. Mark let out a choked sound. The guard shoved him. Stop, I screamed. Richard closed the window, pocketing the drive. He faced Mark. She broke into the company's encrypted network, Richard said evenly. She and your sister stole proprietary data. Her login credentials are all over the server logs. They show her and this man, he gestured to Mark, downloading our source code after midnight. That's corporate espionage. Mark stared at me, then at Richard, then at the blank tablet. I don't understand, Mark said quietly. You don't have to, Richard said. Our legal team will handle it. He turned to his men. Where are we taking them? One asked. Richard checked his phone, sending the location. A private residence in Brookline. Room 3, separate wings. I'll have our lawyers prepare a statement. Wait, Mark's voice shook. You're not calling the authorities? We need to contain this, Richard said, his tone reasonable. Keep it quiet, get our story straight before the media gets it. This is how we protect the company, Mark. Trust me, I've handled these sensitive issues before. It's standard procedure. Mark faltered, then conceded. I wanted to scream that Richard was a monster, that there were no lawyers, that we'd disappear. But a guard's hand was on my arm, pulling me forward. Mark's eyes met mine. They screamed, I'm sorry. They led us to a black town car. They put Mark in one and me in another, where a woman in nurse's scrubs was waiting. The last thing I heard was Richard's voice. Thank you, Mark. I know this is hard. Just get her some help, Mark said. She's not thinking clearly. The door slammed shut. The engine started. I don't know how long we were on the road, maybe an hour. The air smelled sterile. My hands hurt from clenching them. My stomach churned with every turn. When the car stopped, a firm hand guided me out. My head was foggy. I was led into a quiet modern house. I heard a keypad beep. A door opened and I was nudged inside. The door locked behind me. I was in a bedroom, maybe 10 by 15. White walls, a large window overlooking a forest. No phone, no TV, just a bed and a heavy silence. The electronic lock hummed. I was a prisoner. I don't know how long I stood there. Hours passed. The sun set. A whole night went by. I sat on the bed, my hand on my stomach, and refused to think about the baby. Refused to think about what Richard was telling everyone, where Mark was. I refused to think about Isabel in her glass office, managing my complete and utter ruin. I thought about my mother instead. I was 15 when she passed. I remember her strength, her voice, always calm. When they build a wall around you, she told me, find the stone that doesn't fit. Every wall has a weakness. I fumbled in my coat pocket. 6:30 in the morning. They'd taken my phone and wallet, but they'd missed my small travel sewing kit, a silly little thing. Tucked into the lining was a tiny encrypted thumb drive. Mark's old partner from the SEC gave it to me. Insurance, he'd said. I backed up the original SEC filings before Richard's team revised them. If he ever comes after you, you'll have the truth. I held the small drive. It felt cold. The truth. Not everything, but it was a start. Isabel had the board and the servers, but this was concrete. Official filings, proof that couldn't be spun in a press release. The silence was maddening. I was in total darkness. The lights were out. I was alone and no one knew where I was. Then, a faint vibration. My old burner phone, hidden in my purse lining. The screen came to life. 1 bar of service, a message on a secure channel sent at 6:15 a.m. unknown sender. I opened it. Eliza, this is David, Richard's former head of IT. I'm so sorry, I helped him create the fake server logs. I can't live with it. The real server backups are stored off-site. The access code is EVG1998. The original source code is there. Richard only wiped the live network. Show him the transfer. The message was from my brother. I read it, my phone shaking again and again. It was a screenshot from their shared business account. Arthur, my husband, the man I loved, the father of my unborn child. He was siphoning money from the architecture firm he co-owned with my brother David, and I knew where it was going. To her, Victoria, his junior partner, his obsession. The digital vault Arthur used for family photos held another folder, one I wasn't supposed to see, a plan to declare me unstable, to take my baby. The door beeped, swinging inward. Bright morning light flooded the hotel suite, and I flinched. A shape stood in the doorway. Not Arthur, not his driver. A woman I didn't recognize. Young, confused. Ma'am? Her voice was quiet, polite. You aren't supposed to be in here. We're setting up this suite for a doctor's consultation. I blinked, my vision sharpening, a hotel staffer. Maybe 25, crisp uniform holding a vase of lilies, not part of Arthur's circle. She didn't know his plans. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice hoarse. I was just heading out. My husband arranged the room. I must have gotten the checkout date wrong. The staffer frowned slightly. Checkout? Ma'am, this suite is booked for the entire week. I work for his wife, I improvised, dropping off a dress for tonight's gala. The door must have locked behind me. She looked at me, my disheveled hair, the fear in my eyes. But I just looked like a frantic pregnant woman. You'll have to use the main entrance, she said, her smile returning. It opens in about 20 minutes. Of course, thank you, I whispered, rushing past her into the hushed, empty hallway. The lobby air was thick with the scent of coffee. I took a deep breath, my lungs aching. The staffer watched me from the elevator, a hint of suspicion in her gaze, but her phone stayed in her pocket. I reached the fountain outside and glanced at my phone. 7:02 a.m. 1 bar of service. I called Arthur. The call went straight to a polished, automated message. I tried his private number. Disconnected. A cold dread settled in my stomach. He was preparing for his big award tonight, leaving me here to be dealt with. I called David. He picked up instantly. Olivia, he sounded terrified. Where are you? I've been trying you all night. I'm at the peninsula, I said. Can you get me? Are you hurt? No, I whispered, but I will be if I stay here. Just come. I'm coming. 5 minutes. I hung up, collapsing onto a cold stone bench as my body began to shake. The sun reflected off the glass towers, painting long shadows across the street. In some penthouse suite, Arthur was practicing his acceptance speech. Somewhere, Victoria was approving the final details of their new life. Somewhere, his mother was telling her friends how the pregnancy had made me so terribly fragile. But I had the files, I had David's text, and I had until 7 p.m. to stop them all. 9 hours to get more proof, 9 hours to call my lawyer, 9 hours to make sure that when I walked into that awards dinner, I had the power to dismantle Arthur Hayes and his carefully constructed world. David's Range Rover pulled up to the curb. He leaped out, his face drawn and pale, and wrapped me in a tight, desperate hug. What are we going to do? He whispered against my hair. I held up my phone, showing him the screenshot. It's all here. The transfers, the fake psychiatric reports, everything. I need access to your firm's main server, and I need to be at that gala by 7. David pulled away, his architect's focus taking over. What's the plan? I'm going to tell our story, I said, in front of our family, our friends, and every major player in the city. David gave a short, determined nod. All right, let's go. We got in the car. He merged into traffic and sped toward his office in the loop. I looked at the phone. 7:19 a.m. I had 11 hours and 41 minutes. It was going to be close. The morning was a blur. By 7:45, David and I were in his stark minimalist office overlooking Millennium Park. The phone felt like a lead weight in my hand. I hadn't slept. My phone's battery was at 7%. But I had the one thing Arthur never imagined: a complete record of his deception, the wire transfers to Victoria's Shell Corporation, and his notes on how to prove my incompetence. The office was quiet. David's associate, a young man named Ben, helped me access their network. I typed in the server address: 40 gigabytes, the real project budgets, the original contracts, and the payment records to Croft Holdings, and 2 audio files. The first was a recording of me, edited to make it sound like I was paranoid and delusional. The second was a conversation between Arthur and a psychiatrist, coaching him on how to have me committed. His initials were on the work order. H50 copies, I said. On the best paper you have? Ben nodded. It will take about an hour. As the printer started to whir, I opened my own laptop and began to write. David stood at the window, a guardian watching over the city. 2 emails, one to our father, one to the chairman of the awards committee. Subject: urgent information regarding Arthur Hayes. Sent September 12th, 2024 at 8:51 a.m. Signed, David Miller. My name is Olivia Hayes. I am the wife of Arthur Hayes. My maiden name is Olivia Miller, born May 3rd, 1990. His firm is receiving an award tonight. Attached are 2 documents. 1, the authentic budget for the North Tower project. 2, a falsified version hiding payments to an entity called Croft Holdings. The discrepancies detail a scheme to embezzle over $3 million from his partnership with my brother, David Miller. I also have evidence file AH 2024 117 proving this entity is owned by Victoria Croft. My husband is attempting to have me institutionalized based on fabricated medical evidence. The awards dinner is scheduled for 7 p.m. at the Chicago Theater. Please review this information. Olivia Hayes. I attached the two budgets and sent the messages. A moment later, a reply came. Re. Case file CC 2024 9821 opened. Forwarded to our internal ethics board. We will contact you shortly. David put a hand on my arm. It's out. They know. I let out a shaky breath. For the first time in a year, I felt like I wasn't losing my mind. At 9:30, as Ben handed me the stacks of documents, the sleek glass door to the office slid open. I went rigid. David's business partner Mark stood there, his suit rumpled, his face was ashen. He looked haunted. Olivia, he said, his voice cracking. David stepped between us. You sided with him. What are you doing here? Mark held up his hands, defeated. Because I was wrong and you're going to need this. He turned his laptop around, showing us a forwarded email. From Hayes Legal to Mr. David Miller. Subject, Strategy for Managing Olivia's Erratic Behavior. Date, September the 12th, 2024, 11:48 p.m. Dear Mr. Miller, a notification showed a transfer of $250,000 was wired to an entity called Croft Holdings, account 702419-B. Then 20% of my architectural firm's shares, valued at $300,000, was moved to that same account at 11:55 p.m. on September 12th, 2024. David's voice was rough. I never approved that transfer. I never signed over my equity. Arthur must have spoofed my credentials and faked my digital signature just like he did to you. I stared at the transaction. The same night Arthur had me committed, he'd siphoned $250,000 and a fifth of my company into Isabel's Shell Corporation. I am so sorry, Olivia, David said. I believed his lies. I thought you had turned on me. But this morning I saw the shared drive alert and checked the logs. The story he told me was a complete lie. The offshore accounts, the internal investigation, it was all smoke and mirrors. He turned us against each other. Chloe looked from me to David. We have to do something, she said. My lawyer is already working on getting Ben out of that clinic, and I'm going with you to the awards dinner. I took a deep breath and nodded. We go together. By 2 p.m., David's attorney, a sharp woman named Maria Flores, had secured Ben Carter's release. The 72-hour hold was dismissed due to lack of evidence and procedural violations. Ben walked out at 2:20 p.m., looking gaunt but resolute. David drove him straight to my apartment. At 4 o'clock, the four of us stood on the steps of the Chicago Theater. It was me, Ben, my brother David, and his wife Chloe. We had two encrypted drives, a laptop, and the cold hard truth. Ben held one of the drives. It's all on here, he said. The financial trails, the chat logs, the whole plan. If we walk in there, this all goes public. I know, I answered. David handed me a small, unmarked flash drive. This has everything from my server, he said. It proves he forged my signature. It's over, Liv. It's finally over. Incriminating emails, hotel receipts, a secret offshore account. It was all there. My phone vibrated. A message from my brother Daniel. Text. Got the server data. Headed to the gallery. Don't start the show without me. D. I showed the message to my sister-in-law, who gave a brief, determined nod. He was on his way, she whispered. My husband's sister, Sophia, glanced at her watch. The main auction would begin in 1 hour. I scanned the sleek Manhattan art gallery, its walls adorned with priceless works. This was the Vance family's world, where my husband, Ethan, reigned as a king. Tonight, I was burning his kingdom down. We stepped inside. At 7 p.m. sharp, the annual Vance Charity Gala was underway. The gallery was packed with New York's elite, around 50 people mingling near the main exhibit. Sophia, in a sharp designer suit, held court like a CEO. A projection above the main stage read, Vance Holdings, Building the Future on a Foundation of Integrity 2024. At a reserved table, Ethan sat with a self satisfied smirk, a man convinced of his own invincibility. I stood by the entrance with Daniel's wife. The tablet in my purse felt like a ticking clock. My hands were clammy. Sophia's voice amplified through the speakers. That is because our family values loyalty, discretion, and absolute transparency above all else. Some of the older investors nodded approvingly. Daniel's wife nudged me. Wait for her to start the auction, I agreed. At 7:40, Sophia smiled. And now, before we begin the bidding, I want to share a few words. I didn't need her permission. I just stood up and walked toward the stage. The polite chatter faded as all eyes turned to me. Sophia's smile faltered. I reached the large projection screen used for displaying the art pieces. Her assistant tried to block me, but I was faster. I plugged the tablet into the system before he could object. I have an announcement, I said, my voice cutting through the now complete silence. How many secrets has your golden boy buried to build his flawless empire? A collective gasp swept the room. Sophia stood, her face a rigid mask of fury. Remove this woman from the premises. But I was already clicking, and the first piece of evidence flashed onto the screen behind her. I opened the folder. The first image, a candid shot of Ethan with his paralegal at a resort, appeared 10 feet high. Subject: Our Little Getaway 2023. A failed tech startup, $250,000. A low murmur spread through the attendees. Smartphones began to emerge, their cameras now active. I swiped to the next slide. Next was Jessica Bell in 2011. A sudden business closure, $410,000. I clicked once more. Then came Maria Flores, 2015. An unexpected bankruptcy for $350,000. Sophia's voice was like ice. This is defamation, utter nonsense. My brother's wife is clearly having a breakdown. I locked eyes with her, then perhaps this will provide some clarity. I switched to the projects folder. 9 headshots appeared on the screen. Each was a different woman, young and hopeful. Below each photo was her name and the year. Chloe Cole, Jessica Bell, Maria Flores, Brenda Kofi, Diana Petrova, Hannah Moss, Claire Delaney, Natalie Fletcher, and the final photo. The label just read OV with the date pending. It was a picture he had taken of me relaxing by the pool at our Hamptons house last summer. A lazy afternoon I hardly remembered. I had no idea he took it. I never realized I was his next project. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices. Shock and anger filled the air. My father, Marcus, walked toward the stage. He took a microphone from the stand, his voice booming with authority. That is my daughter, he declared, pointing his finger at Chloe's image. Chloe Cole. She was engaged to be married to a man named Damien Croft in November of 2021. Less than 3 months later, she fell from a yacht. The authorities ruled it a tragic accident. It was no accident. He ruined her financially before she died, just like he planned for the others. And Olivia Vance was next on his list. A woman in the front row began to cry. Sophia pointed a finger at my father. This man is a known business rival. He has a history of making baseless accusations. Nothing he says is credible. My brother Liam stepped forward, holding his tablet up for a reporter from the Times. This should be credible enough, Liam stated. Damien Croft transferred over $600,000 from our company's trust 2 days ago with a forged authorization. The encrypted transaction log is right here. The reporter's jaw dropped as she looked at the screen. Sophia hissed at her event security. Get these people out of here now. But before they could act, the gallery's front doors swung open. 4 people in formal wear entered, their agency badges visible on their belts. Their leader, a composed woman with sharp eyes, spoke clearly. I'm Investigator Miller, from the District Attorney's Office, her voice silencing the chaos. Damien Croft and Sophia Croft, you are both under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. The gallery descended into pandemonium. Guests were shouting, recording the scene with their phones. The press surged toward the stage. Sophia's face turned ashen. She gripped the lectern for support, but Damien remained calm. He stood, reached into his blazer, and pulled out a heavy, ornate award statue. The metal gleamed under the gallery lights. Don't move, he ordered, his eyes fixed on me. He gestured to a nearby gallery bench. Sit down. The tension was palpable. My brother Ethan stood up, placing himself as a barrier between me and Damien. A wry smile touched Damien's lips. You should have stayed quiet, Amelia. He then took a step toward my side. Ethan moved immediately to block him. You won't get near her. Two of Ethan's colleagues emerged from the back office. One stood directly in Damien's path, while the other secured the main exit. Damien froze, realizing he was cornered. His sister Catherine, a high-profile attorney, slammed her hand on a nearby sculpture pedestal. In moments, our sophisticated charity event had turned into a standoff. Damien didn't resist, he just seethed with anger. Catherine tried to make a break for it. She grabbed her clutch, her stilettos clacking on the polished concrete floor. Ethan's friend, David, stepped in front of her. I don't believe you have an exit strategy, he said calmly. Catherine stopped, her professional demeanor finally cracking. The other guests were frozen, their expressions a mixture of fear and fascination. Their phones were all raised, capturing every second. Daniel held a tablet high, the screen illuminated. For the benefit of everyone here, he announced, his voice slicing through the tense silence of the gallery. For the last 60 days, my sister has retained a forensic accountant. As of this evening, we have undeniable evidence of Ethan's extramarital affairs and a conspiracy to conceal marital assets. He swiped on the screen, revealing a clear photo of Ethan with another woman. Thanks to his own arrogance, he gestured toward my husband, we have more than enough for a divorce, citing adultery and financial fraud, with his sister as a co-conspirator. The silence was deafening. I felt dizzy, unable to stand on my own. Daniel's hand on my elbow was the only thing holding me up. Ethan's mother let out a small sob. His father was motionless, staring at his son in disbelief. At 8:15, a man in a catering uniform stepped out from the crowd. He was thin, in his late 40s, his face etched with anxiety. My name is David Clark, oh, he said, his voice shaking. I'm the chief art appraiser. I was pressured into forging provenance certificates back in 2022. I helped him launder funds through art acquisitions, and I am willing to testify to everything. A new wave of gasps went through the room. Sophia glared at him with pure hatred, but David stood his ground. He looked directly at me. I'm so sorry. I first saw Ethan destroy a competitor's reputation in 2012. His family always protects him. They made threats against my family, but I cannot participate any longer. Daniel nodded. Our legal team will be in touch. Your testimony will be recognized by the authorities. As the guests began to disperse around 9 o'clock, a young woman approached me. She was an artist, no older than 25, dressed in a simple black outfit. Her eyes were red-rimmed as she stopped in front of me. You must be Olivia, she said softly. My name is Isabella. I got a text from an unknown number about 2 hours ago. It said I was about to be exposed as his other woman. She drew a shaky breath. Ethan promised to be my benefactor. I nearly fell for all of it. Her hand trembled as she motioned to a massive canvas on the wall. He gave me that original painting last week, she murmured. He said it was a gift for my discretion. My blood ran cold. The painting belonged in our private vault. 3 months later, in November of 2024, I stood on the terrace of my new condo, my hands resting on my 6-month pregnant stomach. The baby stirred. Daniel had been sleeping on my couch since September, helping me set up the new place and find a lawyer. He made sure I ate 3 meals a day. We never spoke about that night. We didn't have to. Ethan's real estate ventures were the subject of a federal fraud investigation. The judge called his behavior a pattern of predatory and malicious deceit. Sophia's license to trade financial securities was permanently revoked. David Clark's full cooperation earned him immunity. He sent me a one-line email of apology. I hadn't answered yet. Daniel had created a nonprofit to assist victims of economic abuse, naming it the Olivia Initiative. My attorney, Miss Davies, shot the file detailing the initial asset seizure. We tracked nearly $7 million Liam had funneled into sham corporations, and the recovery process was underway. This was just the beginning. On November 15th, 2024, the Phoenix Project was officially launched as a foundation. My brother Leo was its director, backed by my dearest friends. Our goal? To give women a lifeline through these kinds of betrayals. I felt the baby kick, a sharp reminder against my palm. I used to doubt I could love a child conceived under such a shadow. I questioned everything. But this baby wasn't his legacy, she was mine. Proof of my will to go on. She was our fresh start. This child was my hope, and so Hope is what I'd call her. Hope Amelia Walsh. Leo came over, placing a warm mug of hot chocolate next to me. His gaze was gentle. Mom would be so incredibly proud of you, he murmured. I managed a faint smile. I think she'd be proud of us both. The Boston skyline outside was a wash of silent gray. My phone buzzed with a message from Maya. Asterisk drink soon? I want to give a piece for your inaugural auction. I replied, absolutely. Let's create something beautiful from the ashes. I set the phone aside, leaned my head back, and for the first time in ages, felt my shoulders drop. The storm had passed. My new life was starting. Now I understand how I bought the entire act. I was so ready for a real family, and Liam Vance played the perfect part. He didn't just drain my accounts, he shattered my ability to trust. Don't be like me. Never sign a document without your own lawyer, no matter how deep in love you think you are. Don't overlook the warning signs just because you crave the happy ending. Don't let a partner's family isolate you from your own people. A sibling's envy can wear a very convincing mask. Deceit is often served with a smile. Genevieve Vance didn't just know about her brother's affair. As his wealth manager, she engineered his entire financial escape route, turning her expertise into a weapon against me. That's not being protective, it's a cold, calculated plot. I learned three things. First, always maintain separate legal and financial advisors. Real love is built on transparency, not blind trust. Second, the family you're born into can break you, but the family you build, like Leo, is what saves you. Third, you have a strength you cannot comprehend. Even when they strip everything away, they can't take your spirit. Leo finding me that night wasn't an accident, it was my salvation. He reminded me of the fight I had left in me. If any part of my story hits home for you, I want to hear from you. What would you do if you learned your partner's own family was helping them deceive you? Your story has power, and if you found inspiration in Clara's fight, I hope you'll follow for more tales of survival. A quick note: while this story is based on real patterns of financial and emotional abuse, some elements were heightened for dramatic purposes. If this isn't the content for you, we hope you find other narratives that are,